Are you okay? Hey guys, this is Grant with your Wednesday night devotional. And that's the question I want to start with. Are you okay? How well are you doing right now during this pandemic? Because how well you're doing, I want to make a suggestion here. How well you're doing is probably connected to what you're filling yourself up with. Ephesians 5:18 says, "Do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit." Don't get drunk on wine. This is relevant. Did you know online alcohol sales have increased by 243% during this pandemic? This is a real number. I am not making it up. But what does Paul mean here? It's actually kind of surprising because this comes out of nowhere. If you're reading Ephesians, in the flow of Ephesians, it just kind of comes as a surprise. And commentators have come up with all kind of interesting theories. Like there was a drinking problem in Ephesus. Or Paul wasn't really talking about drinking, he's just using it as a foil for what we should be filled up with. Or maybe Paul is contrasting the Dionysian cult, which fills themselves up with wine. They get drunk with wine and have wild parties and invite the Dionysian deity in. And Paul is simply saying that's not what Christians do. We don't fill up with wine, we fill up with the Spirit. But when we focus too much on the wine, we miss Paul's larger point, which is not what we should not be filling up on, but what we should be filling up on. If we back up a few verses, Paul says some more things that's relevant to us right now. Ephesians 5:15 through 16 says, "Be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil." What if we were to take this advice today, this very relevant advice that Paul gives? What if we took being wise seriously? How would we be reacting to the different things we hear on the news or from political partisans? Maybe we would be able to see through our political allegiances to recognize wisdom wherever it comes from. What if we were taking advantage of every opportunity? What opportunities are at your door right now? How well are you taking advantage of them during this time? And this time has its challenges. I want to make sure that I don't downplay that. But at the same time, there are great opportunities. And are you taking advantage of all of them? During this pandemic, here's some things that we're doing more. As I said earlier, online alcohol sales are up 243%. Internet use is up 70%. International use of Netflix may grow by 30%, which is huge for a company that is already in most homes. Facebook use is up 29%. Twitch is up 19%. TikTok, which I hadn't even heard about until a few weeks ago, is up 15%. Snapchat is having their highest number of users ever. All these companies are breaking their records. So I ask you again, are you okay? I want you to take just a minute and do a self-evaluation. How are you doing during this time of physical distancing as we're all homebound? How are you doing mentally, physically, and spiritually? So what I want you to do is press pause right now. Go get a notepad and a pen if you need to, if you want to write things down. But I want you to take just a few moments and do a little self-evaluation and be honest with yourself. How are you doing mentally, physically, and spiritually? Press pause now. Tied to your mental, physical, and spiritual health, directly tied, is what you are putting into yourself. That's the question. How are you feeling right now? What are you putting into your mind or body, and how is that contributing to how you feel? If you are not okay, start by changing your diet. And I'm not only talking about what you eat, but I'm talking about all the things that you put into your mind and body. Don't get drunk on wine, as Paul says. But I would say don't get drunk on Netflix or Facebook or Snapchat or TikTok. Don't get drunk on laying in the bed. Don't get drunk on bad food. Don't get drunk on staying on the couch all day. I'm not saying you shouldn't do any of these things. You notice that Paul doesn't say don't drink wine. He says don't get drunk on wine. I'm not saying you shouldn't do these things. Don't get drunk on them. If you will, I'm going to go outside for just a minute and do an illustration for you, and then I'm going to come right back. I want you to imagine that this is you, okay? This is you. You're an empty container. And I want you to imagine just a second that this is the dot of stuff that maybe you're overindulging in. When we fill ourselves up with this, it comes to be what makes us up. And then when it begins to overflow, it's what begins to overflow out of us. I found ourselves filled up like this, just filled up with all of this stuff that's going on right now. And maybe there comes a time where we start feeling bad, and the overflow of this stuff is really negative. It's the overflow of this where we find ourselves talking bad about people, gossiping about people, having a negative attitude, maybe feeling bad physically, maybe feeling bad mentally or emotionally or spiritually, because we're filling ourselves up only with this stuff right here. Now, what do we do when we want to change what we're filled up with? So if I were to take this hose full of clean, drinkable hose water and start filling up this cup, check out what happens. Now look what it's filled up with. Good, clean water. Now, and we didn't change that. We couldn't change that by adding more of that stuff in or by doing less of it. If we do less of it, we just stay the same. And we can't even change by adding just a little bit from time to time if we go back to filling ourselves up with all of that other stuff. What we got to do is we've got to leave the hose on. And so that's what I really want to suggest that you do during this time, is to make sure that you're leaving the hose on in your life, that you're allowing those good things to continue to fill you up so that what you have on the inside is matching the way that you want to be perceived on the outside. I hope that that illustration was helpful. The main point I want to get across is that we can't keep filling ourselves up with certain things and expect the way we feel inside to change. We got to start changing the things we put into ourselves. And we can't just change a little bit and then go back to pouring all that bad stuff back in again. We have got to get a steady stream of good things coming into us. If we want to be filled with the Spirit, we have to steadily be filling ourselves up with the Spirit. So, what is that? I think sometimes we get caught up thinking that being filled with the Spirit is some kind of mystical thing. But James 1:17 says, every good and perfect gift is from above. And so, what I want to suggest to you is that filling yourself up with the Spirit is not something that's mystical. It's not something magical that happens to you. It's simply filling yourself up with the things that are from God. And what we know from James 1:17 is that every good and perfect gift is from above. So take some time and fill yourself up with the good stuff. Make sure that the diet of what you're putting into yourself includes reading your Bible, praying, right, going to worship service with your family, but also calling and checking on people, going on a walk, hugging the people in your house, reading a good book, and noticing where we can find God in some of these things that don't even seem connected to God. Every good and perfect gift comes from above. It brings me back to my original question. Are you okay? If you're not, maybe try changing some of the things that you're filling yourself up with. Have a great day. God bless.